Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bits in between.
Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bit in between. With your host, Barry Kirby.
Okay, welcome to this episode of the 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. I'm going to be deviating slightly from what I've done. We are still doing an interview, but for the first time, I'm not actually going to be interviewing somebody who is an ergonomist or human factors practitioner, but it is somebody who will be having a massive influence over the ergonomic and human factors world over the next 5 years in his tenure as the Chief Executive of the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors, and that is Dr Noorzaman Rashid. Noorzaman, welcome, and thank you very much for agreeing to be grilled by us today.
Thanks very much, Barry. I'm looking forward to it.
They all say that until afterwards. So what I'd like to do is firstly get to know a bit more about yourself, and then look at what your ambitions are for the institute itself. So, but I know that you're spending a lot of time trying to engage with members at the moment and see what they're doing. So it's very easy to see that title of a chief executive and think, you know, it's a very big role up there in the grand scheme of things, because you're essentially running all of that logistical stuff and a bit in the background. But what is it that the chief executive actually does on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think it's really important, Barry, to distinguish what the purpose of a chief executive's role is, as well as what they do on a day-to-day, because then we work out why we get value from them. And the purpose of the role of a chief executive, and in particular for the Institute, it's to help reinforce the vision for the Institute, what our mission is, and how we're going to achieve that. I also become the champion of our discipline and our profession on behalf of our members, so that we can make a bigger impact on society. What that means on a day-to-day basis is actually engaging with every level and type of category of membership that we've got, from the chartered member to the students, which I enjoy thoroughly. It means talking with stakeholders and allied professional bodies to support what we're doing. And most importantly, for the next 5 years, it means influencing policies and developments that might impact our discipline and our profession, and how we evolve. And a good example of that is the patient safety syllabus that has been established by the NHS to be rolled out across the NHS. And so we have placed ourselves in a central position, both to advise them on what that curriculum should be for the 600 patient safety specialists that they're about to appoint, and for frontline staff. And influencing policy in the healthcare industry is a really good example of what a chief executive should be doing on behalf of this institute.
Brilliant. And that certainly gives us a really good teaser into the sort of things that we can expect to be coming up. But obviously that's around the role itself. But I think, if you don't mind, I'd like to get to know a bit more about the man behind the chief executive title. So this is clearly not your first rodeo in terms of this high-level role. If anybody Googles your LinkedIn or your history, you've clearly got a broad spread of experience. But where did it all begin? Because if you don't mind me saying, you're not exactly in the older generation for this sort of job either. So you've clearly accelerated forward. So where did it all begin for you?
Well, I always like to tell people I was born in Yorkshire, because what that basically means is, not that I'm tight-fisted.
I wasn't going to say that, but I will.
It basically means that what you see is what you get.
Right.
And I think when you meet enough people and talk to them about my engagement with them, the ability to listen deeply and reflect what they want, there's a real passion for making things happen for organisations, particularly where there's a public service and a public good. So for me, I studied three-dimensional design and technology, and I do think they mentioned ergonomics once upon a time in those early 1980s courses that I was in. I was destined to be a product designer,
right?
But After university, I had a big family to support in a single parent family. And so I went straight out to work. I worked in a few small design consultancies. And before I knew it, I had 10 years in local government, working for the public service, which in a way reflects my own ethics about doing good for the public. And at the ripe old age of 27, I found myself as head of the Chief Executive's office in one of the biggest local authorities in England. I went on to do a similar job, and over 10 years, I focused on business transformation, quality improvement, citizenship, engagement, and corporate policy.
Right.
And that's where I started my career. But as a person, I think I have a lot of values around social inclusion, and that's good because when we talk about design principles and engagement and meeting user needs, what you get from me is asking the questions, well, how does that meet the need of the person perhaps in a wheelchair or someone from a different ethnic background that may not be able to read or appreciate the colour or the signage of whatever. Yeah. And so I think I bring my own personality into that. And so that's the person. But as an individual, I have given a lot to society. I'm really proud of that, and it comes in at the top 3 of my achievements. And one is, establishing a multi-academy trust. And in 2007, it was one of the first in the country. Right. I had to work pretty closely to Lord Adonis, who was the schools commissioner then, and then after the change of government with Michael Gove. And within a 3-year period, I'd established 30 city academies in areas of need across the country. Wow. It ranged from 99% Muslim school in Oldham to an all-white working class school in Cumbria and one in northeast Lincolnshire. Right. So it again reflected my personal values about helping people that are more disadvantaged perhaps than others, who need a better start in life to make a difference. Yeah. And so you begin to work out the champion in me to do good.
Yes. So with that then, and I guess it is a slight diversion, for which I make no apologies, is with that sort of role of setting up the academy side of thing, there's a strong balance there of business and doing good, and both have to succeed. Which obviously is then translated through a bunch of the other charitable stuff that you've done. How do you get that balance right? Because you clearly have. Yeah. So what do you think is that golden nugget?
Barry, a lot of people get it wrong when they say this is a public service like a university and it must run like a business, or you get a chair of a charity that says I want to run it like a business. And the two philosophies are quite different, charitable and business. The business aimed there to make profit for the individuals or a collective of other people. The charity there mainly with a social purpose to do good for society and make a difference to their lives. Any surplus income that's made is reinvested back in its social purpose or its community. And therefore I talk about running social purpose or public entities with the discipline of business, if you like.
Yeah.
So we're not disciplined to make money for the sake of making money. We're disciplined to save, to get value for money, to reinvest. And I've always been very clear about that. I do worry about universities who tend to be so commercial these days that they're forgetting the student need and what their purpose in life is. Yeah. In a way, lots of different governments have come in of all colours trying to make them more conscious of money, and universities have hired people that are more of the business-like person and forgetting the student as the customer.
Yes, no, I think that's really apparent, because it's making sure that you understand why you are there for in the first place, which is probably the bit that gets obscured. So then you've obviously then gone and done a number of charitable organisations, and all of them, as far as I can tell, being very, very successful. But which has been the one that's given you most, I guess, satisfaction, that glow of success?
I think it's not one of the larger charities that I've chaired or been involved in. It was in fact one of the smaller charities called Futureversity, that's based in the East End of London in the Brick Lane area, where we were recruiting young people to teach them the competences, if you like, and skill set to do well in life, generally. And, you know, a reflection of my own creativity, when the trainers were talking about competencies, I said, I don't think these young people are interested in competencies. So we talked to the young people, and they decided they were superpowers. You know, I thought, how lovely. You know, and they, throughout their 6 months training, they were all talking about the different human superpowers that they had to evolve to do well in life. And the reason it's my favourite is because I could see the backgrounds of some of those kids who, when they came onto some of the learning programs, I've never seen young people eat so much, and really it almost now brings tears to my eyes because it basically meant they were hungry.
Yeah.
As a result of that, I got involved in charities that raise funds to provide free school meals. For our training course, we never had the budget to feed them breakfast, lunch and something to take home. But guess what? We went out and we got donations from local shops in the East End, and we created lunches and meals for them to take home. Yeah. We didn't make a big issue about it because we didn't want the kids to feel bad about it. But we just made it available. So I'm proud because I was emotionally moved by something I had not really realised was going on.
That's fascinating. That's, yeah, I mean, we could go down a whole different political discussion here, but this is probably not the forum. We'll do another one on that.
If you are a human factors practitioner or in a related discipline and are not already a member, then do look up the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors. They are the professional institution for all human factors practitioners. Find them at www.ergonomics.org.uk.
So I guess pushing forward to the present day, you see an advert or you get told about the Chief Executive role here at the Chartered Institute. Why apply?
I've been working as a management consultant in a wide breadth of areas, working for the NHS, working for other membership bodies, working for trade organisations, and in the last few years I've been running a social inclusion business, in fact for my wife, who is the lead person. But I was at home doing the books and doing the business development and things like that. I talked to a few headhunter friends of mine, and they said, you really ought to be leading a charity or a professional body. And I went on holiday and I came back and somebody said, hey, there's a job at the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors. And I immediately said, well, that's not for me, is it? It's one, the name's too long. Secondly, I've got no qualifications in that. And they probably want a grumpy academic to do it who knows 100 times more than me. But I read it and I realised it was all about changing lives. And so I couldn't work out what the purpose of the Institute was, to be honest, when I was applying. Yeah. And then I thought to myself, and I presented this at the interview when I met the panel, and I said, I think your purpose is to integrate design to improve life, well-being and performance. And I think you do it through science, through engineering, through technology, through psychology. Yeah. And the panel were a little bit stunned, and I thought I've said something wrong here, clearly, time to go. But actually, when they appointed me, they asked me to restate that and adopted it as the vision, if you like, for the Institute.
I was going to say, that's always been, and we've sort of said this in previous podcasts as well, so people who've heard different episodes will recognise this. We've spent an awful lot of time, and still do, talking about, what is ergonomics and human factors? And three different people in the room, we can still have 6 different opinions. So yes, it's one of the things we've been missing, I think, is that nice, pithy almost, but definition that you can put out there. And then, because you've actually got a grip of potentially understanding what it means. But anyway, we digress. So you're now in post. You've been in post for a few months, and I think quite clearly making your mark on. We've seen a really good interview in the Ergonomics magazine, and as well as you've been able to get yourself out into publications as well, which is brilliant, spreading the good word. But it's a long 5 years ahead. So what do you want to achieve in your tenure here?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of myself as a chief executive that's engaging, inspirational, lead by example. And that's why I do what I do. I want people to almost do what I do, which is champion our discipline, our profession, how we want to change the world. Working at Velocity has been a way that people have described me because they can't keep up. But guess what? I think the previous CEO and the team that were here have done a marvellous job. It's taken the Institute from really a truly voluntary society to being organised. Yeah. And I've been delighted to take over an organisation that's organised, and therefore I'm able to move at Velocity. Okay. And what am I moving at Velocity with is to get the notion that the Institute is the preeminent voice to do with ergonomics and human factors. Okay. If government comes out with a consultation paper, if the NHS come out with something on patient safety, if the nuclear industry comes out with something to do with risk, I want them to actually think of Institute Ergonomics and Human Factors. We should be asking them, their special interest group, or we know they've got a sector group that should be interested. I want people to recognise that there is a profession here that is changing lives for the better, and I don't think we've got that visibility yet. That is my end goal, is for people to know us a little bit more than, well, actually, a lot more than what they know of us today. Yeah. I was saying to someone, I was meeting a few of my CEO colleagues in the Society of Occupational Medicine and the British Occupational Hygiene Society and the International Institute of Risk and Safety Management. And I basically said to the colleagues of mine that in years to come, there will be a professional role on the board that encompasses what we do. You know, when electricity was first invented, there was a chief electricity officer. Yeah. Decades later, we had chief information officers, we've got chief marketing officers, we've got chief diversity and inclusion officers on boards. Yeah. Why don't we have someone to do with human factors? Because our discipline has science, it has engineering, it has design, it has art in it as well, actually. Yeah. There is going to be a world where our discipline is going to be on that board table, and I want to find out what that discipline is and get it there.
That's a really strong ambition, and I think that's, if we can get even anywhere near that, then you'll have achieved a massive game-changing role. So I guess the hard bit about that is the how, isn't it? Now we've got the new strategy coming out now. I guess it must have been quite difficult in many ways that the strategy had already been built up, but you've been able to influence that. So how do you see the sort of, we don't necessarily need to go into detail, but how do you see that strategy rolling out? Yeah, there's a 5-year strategy. It focuses around 4 key strategic themes. One is about creating a world-class organisation, and to do that we have to build an infrastructure that can accommodate many more members and can influence the world a lot more. That's what a world-class organisation does. There's a lot in its second theme about supporting members. I'm hugely a supporter of member engagement. I have open door access to any members who write to me. I want to listen to them. I want to help them with their careers. I want to help them with their businesses. I want to help them if they're working in a university. A good example of what we're doing in supporting members, we'll be launching some personal development programs, how to set up your own business, how to sell, how to present more effectively, how to use social media. These were things that people thought, well, somebody else does that. I said, no, we should do it for our members, you know. And of course, later, we'll be looking at how we can engage more members in creating white papers on topics that they are very knowledgeable about, but they'd never thought of writing one. Right. So I want more people to create thought leadership, and that's part of how we support those members. A third theme is around the future human, because a lot of what we do is not just for the now, it's for the future. So we want people to talk more about how our discipline impacts the future well-being of individuals, of communities, of societies, whether it's through the design of new public transport, the design of integrated robotics that work on at street level, smart cities, I think they call it.
And our last theme is about collaboration with allied bodies, with trade organisations. A good example, I'm speaking with Liquid Gas UK, who have 100 corporate members who represent a large part of the energy industry in this country, actually, because liquid gas is used at fun fairs, in catering businesses. It's more prevalent and more widespread than people realise. There's a lot of safety issues, there's a lot of risk issues, there's a lot of human factors issues around the design of how that fuel is used. And they've just woken up and said, I think we need to understand human factors.
Yes.
And so we're influencing other trade bodies. That's one level, but the other level is to influence government and influence policy and influence educational establishments on the kind of programming, training that we want to be available for human factors people.
That's really interesting, yes, because one of the things that we've sort of been talking about recently is people, when they're going through school, when they're going through their primary school, secondary school, you grow up, you want to be a scientist, you want to be an engineer, you want to be an astronaut, nobody ever says that they want to be an ergonomist. And in fact, most people you talk to don't realise that ergonomics exists until either it's put right front and square in front of them one way or another, either as part of their role and suddenly they're in charge of it, or they come across it at university, either as part of their first degree, maybe going to do a master's and that type of thing. Do we have ambitions to go and try and get into earlier education, do you think?
I think that it's always good to influence young people at an early stage about what life could be like. And we run a careers fair every year, and I thought it was fabulous, the one we ran in Birmingham earlier this year. Young people looking at what the opportunities are. It is a challenge because most of the degree courses are at master's level for ergonomics and human factors people. I almost come full circle to discussing what this future role will be between an ergonomics, a human factors person, an engineer, etc. After all, they never thought of a chief marketing officer, they never thought of a chief information officer until they realised there was a function deeply required by business and industry.
Yes.
I feel at some stage by promoting the contribution of human factors to business, to industry, to community, people will turn around and say, actually, we need you at the board table to inform how we're actually engaging our customers, how we're looking at the design process, how we are looking at our investment plans that might have an impact given the human factors elements of it. It's a long way, it's a long journey before we can get to that new job, the integration of many disciplines. But for the time being, I think going to schools, universities and colleges and talking about our discipline actually does motivate young people to get into science, into engineering, who then decide to specialise in human factors or ergonomics. And in many ways, Barry, that's why we have many members who have multiple charterships. I think like yourself, actually, chartered engineer, chartered ergonomist. I've come across chartered psychologists who are now chartered ergonomists, which really does say that we are operating in a blended environment where multiple sciences, multiple arts and disciplines are coming into play.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some people actually quite nicely described us in a meeting the other day that we were having. There's the human factors and ergonomics role is actually the glue that holds many other bits together. I'm not sure that's entirely true, but I quite like the concept of it, the fact that we can just get in and get anywhere.
This podcast is supported by K-Sharp, the Human Science Research and Human Factors Consultancy. If you want to know how innovating in the relationship between humans and technology can add value to your business, product, or research, then visit www.ksharp.co.uk.
So over the next 5 years, you've obviously got your strategy, as we've said, but there must be some things you're looking forward to more than any others. Have you got any of your own little things that you think you just can't wait to get underway?
Yeah, I think there's several really nice projects and initiatives we've got on the go. There's 3 in particular right now. We launched an energy learning pathway in December, working with the Institute of Energy, We set ourselves a target of, I think, about 50 people to join that in the first couple of years, and within weeks we've got 100. That basically means we'll end up with 100 technical members.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it and the attraction of it to industry is because it has 3 levels. Level 1 being an entry for pretty much anybody that just wants to have the basics, level 2 to the next level of specialism, and then technical membership for level 3. We are, and I am really looking forward to creating a healthcare learning pathway and user experience learning pathway. With the healthcare learning pathway, we're working with professionals across the NHS, with Health Education England, NHS Education Scotland. In terms of UX, we are actually working with UX professionals at universities who actually blend computer science with three-dimensional design. Yeah. And that's just going to be a treat. Yes. You know, to actually see the institute grow up and grab another growing area, actually, of human factors, but the one that concerns the human more. So I'm really looking forward to that. At the end of this year, we're going to launch a Human Factors Roadshow, which will be focused on business leaders to promote the role of human factors, the beginning of my journey of bashing down boardroom doors to let business understand that you've got people, or you might need people to make a difference to your business. And, you know, last but not least is in our conferencing as we evolve, I hope to turn our national conference into an international conference. We're heavily dominated with academic submissions at the moment, but what I think people want to see, and especially practitioners and industry, is an industry engagement to collaborate with industry. So next year we've already talking to NASA, to Rolls-Royce, Jaguar Land Rover, to get some bigwigs from there to come and tell us about how their industry is moving and how and what role human factors professionals can play.
That's absolutely fantastic, and it really paints quite an exciting future. Now, I know we've got a council meeting coming up in a few minutes, so we will draw things to a close. But Noorzaman, I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time to come and talk to us, and hopefully the members who listen to the podcast will understand a bit more about the man behind the title. And I would just like to reiterate what you said about your openness. I've certainly found that me being able to just contact you has been absolutely brilliant. And if you don't mind, I will put your contact details in with the podcast in the description notes. So if you scroll down with the episode notes, you should, as long as I've got my admin sorted out, find all the contact details there. But for now, Noorzaman, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Barry.
Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions, and comments. You can contact us at www.barrykirby.co.uk and on Twitter at @BAZ_K. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense.
Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions, and comments. You can contact us on social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at 1202 Podcast. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense.